Hey everybody, it's Mandy from Tropical Forge. I put out a video a couple weeks ago that we got a whole hog from our farmer friend down the road. I put a video out before about how to render tallow and how to render lard, but we were using our KitchenAid mixer attachment at the time. And it's just not practical when you're trying to do a mass amount of fat at once. It's kind of like the grain mill that attaches to the KitchenAid mixer. It's better to just get the tool that fits that project because the KitchenAid is not made for that much work. So I'm gonna show you how to render lard if you get pig fat. When you order a half a hog or a whole hog or whatever you do, make sure you ask for that because it's a super simple way to make a lot of cooking fat. So we recently invested in this Lem Big Bite grinder. Of course I have it on the non-English side, grinder. So we invested in this one. We have the number 12, which is a 0.75 horsepower. We sort of went with the one in the middle. I think our hardware store had 5 options, if I recall, and we went with the one right in the middle. The biggest one was obviously like twice as much. I can't remember how much this was. I want to say it was like 600 or something like that. I can't quite remember. A little expensive, but I use this to render tallow to make soap, which I'm making by like the 5-gallon bucket at a time. Or like when we get a whole hog, and I showed you in that video, we have almost a trash bag full. So like, this is totally worth it. It's gonna pay for itself and we'll use it for multiple things. Obviously, like we could use this to grind meat or any of those kinds of things. We don't just have to use it to make fat. Yeah, there's a bunch of attachments you can get to go with it. We recently learned that they have like a really cool catalog with a lot of things that I probably really need. But anyway, we're gonna show you today how to render lard using a grinder, like more of a commercial style grinder, and then how to cook it down and throw it on the shelf and all that kind of stuff. When you get fat from your butcher in like a mass amount like this, it's probably going to look something like this. You're just gonna have these gigantic pinkish whitish chunks. So the first thing that we do is we pull out our big cutting board. We have 2 of these. I think both of these are from Sam's Club. You can probably get them at like your local restaurant supply type store. The ones from Sam's Club are pretty inexpensive. They're a huge pain in the butt to wash. But they're great for projects like this. So Zad sharpened up his super old knife. Is that your grandfather's?
No.
Whose is it?
I don't know. I found it in a box of tools I bought one time.
Oh, just kidding. It came from an old box of tools. Nonetheless, it's a super old knife. And he was just talking about how like knives are just like, it's so much harder to get a really good knife these days. So like he sharpened it and he like literally shaved the hair off the back of his hand. Like our kitchen knife set, now, I know they're not Cutco or anything or like a really expensive brand. But the quality of older knives is just, yeah, we've sharpened our kitchen knives and they're fine for the kitchen, but they're not that great. So anyway, get a really good sharp knife, get it sharpened, get it ready. So we're gonna pull this off kind of in batches and you're gonna cube it like 1-inch cubes-ish.
Yeah, give or take. It grinds quicker and easier if you have...
Yeah, smaller chunks do better. This thing is great because it's kind of got a tray at the top. So like if we get it all chunked up and like put in bus tubs, I can feed it as Zad's running the grinder. Zad made a good point too. If this is like kind of par frozen, so I had this in the deep freezer and I had to pull it out because there was just so much meat from this pig. I had like nowhere to go with it. So I wasn't planning on tackling this weekend, but we got to get it out of the freezer. So I pulled it out the other night, so 2 nights ago, and put it in our cooler. We have like one of those coolers that keeps stuff cold for like 3 days or whatever if you don't open it. So I sat it in there. So if it's kind of partially frozen, that can kind of be helpful. All right, so as you can see, Zad is cutting this into 1-inch size pieces. Doesn't have to be an exact science. If you can cut off like the really meatier parts, that really does help with your rendering, helps it render a little bit faster. That's kind of a preference thing, I guess. So
porky meat smell.
Yeah, that's true. It does help cut down on the smell if you can get that off. Really, when you're done with your lard, it shouldn't really smell like much of anything, but if you leave that meat in there, it can definitely have more of a meat smell. So we're going to, I've talked about this metal bus tub before. Someone gave us like 3 or 4 of these, I think 3. They're fantastic. We used them when we did the apple cider on the antique press, which I have a video up of, and they were just fantastic. So anyway, pull out your bus tub, your 5-gallon buckets, whatever, big bowls, whatever it is that you use, and get it cut down into manageable size pieces. All right, so Matt is finishing off this. You can see we got a good pile here of like meaty blood and stuff. We don't want that in our lard. Zad's got the first bus tub ready to go. He's got the grinder set up. So you can see the tray here and the plunger that I was talking about. This tray is nice. You can fill your tray up. Jamie's gonna be on feeding duty, so we'll show you what this looks like. All right, so you can see how awesome this comes out. The reason that we do this is that when we go to render it down, it doesn't take as long. When I first started this, I didn't know any better, and I just threw huge chunks in the pot, and it took forever to render down. So this makes nice pieces that we can throw in our stock pot to render down. Jamie is feeding the tray. This is gonna go super fast. So much faster than the KitchenAid mixer. All right, so this is Elle's first experience with, she doesn't like to handle meat, but she's overcoming her fear. Raw meat, yes. So she cut some fat up for us, put it through the grinder. So this is what we got, almost a bus tub full from that bag. So we're gonna move on to the next step. I need to go get the stock pot. All right, so we got our heavy bottom stock pot. Make sure it's stainless steel. Don't use a cheap aluminum one. If you ding on the bottom and it makes a ding noise, then that's a bad pot. Don't use that. So as Zad's filling this up, we're gonna put it on the propane burner. Kind of put it on like low medium if you have an electric stove, maybe higher. Ours burns really hot, so I don't wanna turn it up too high. So we're gonna start to render this down, and then we're just gonna pour it in jars. We'll be almost done. All right, so we have our fat cooking down, or fat cooking down in this pot, just using my big spatula here. All right, so this has rendered down. I'll show you what it looks like here. So there's a lot of the stuff settled on the bottom. I didn't, want it to come to a boil or anything. It's just kind of gently, simmering, I guess. So it's ready to strain. So if you've watched any of my other videos, you know that this 5-gallon bucket with a fine strainer and flour sack towel is my favorite. And when I say fine, like, it looks like that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pour the stock pot into this, let all of the things I don't want in my lard, because I want it to be like as clarified as possible, or like as strained as possible. Let that drip into the bottom, and then we'll fill our jars. All right, so some stuck to the bottom. I feel like that always happens. It's not a big deal. It didn't burn. It doesn't smell burnt, none of that. So I got all of that out of the bucket. I'm kind of just swirling it around. The canning ladle is great for this. Like, I used it to start, and then I just poured the whole thing in just to speed it along. But so what I'm gonna do is, these are pretty tiny pieces. Usually pork cracklings are real big. So you might be able to fry these up and make something with it. I'm just gonna dump them in this pot, and then tomorrow we'll feed these to the chicken. All right, so definitely gonna want the canning funnel for this process. I got probably 3 gallons of lard out of this. So I have 1, 2, 3, I have 4 gallons worth of quarts ready, because you don't want to fill it totally to the top. We're not canning this. There isn't like a head space necessarily. I'd probably leave an inch, just, it's hot right now. And just so you don't risk cracking anything, that's probably what I would do. So I have 4 gallons worth of jars ready, 3 gallons of lard here. It's gonna be like a yellowish color, but when it's solid, it'll be white. All right, so this is a jar we're working out of right now. This is what it looks like when it is rendered. When it's rendered and then put on the shelf and it's cool, it's this nice white color. So you should really get this white color once it's all cooled. So I'm gonna fill these jars, and then we're gonna let these cool and get them on the pantry shelf. All right, so even though we strained it once, the very last one I'm just gonna use this fine strainer with because there's teeny little bits in the bottom of the bucket. And to keep our lard as shelf stable as possible for as long as possible, I wanna make sure we don't have any junk in there. So we're just gonna pour this in here so that it can catch any little bits that are left. Wait, go to the next jar. So we got that. We wound up with 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. We have 13 quarts of lard to put on the shelf. That's pretty amazing. That's what, like over 3 gallons of fat that we can use for baking or cooking or whatever. So this is what it looks like once it's in your jars. And like I said, once you put it on the shelf, it'll turn white. It'll be beautiful. We've kept our lard on the shelf over a year, honestly, and it's not gone rancid. You can fridge it, you can freeze it, whatever is well with your soul. You don't have to can it or anything. Once this is cool, I'll put lids on it and put it on the shelf, and that's it. So if you have any questions about how to do this, let me know. If you don't have a commercial meat grinder like we have, I have a video on how to do it with the KitchenAid attachment. I might have a video where I didn't grind it at all. I'll double check and I'll link that in the description if I have one. But if you have questions about this process, let me know. We'll see you next time.